right, here we go. Let's talk about before reading strategies. So this video will just preview a little bit of information for you, a little bit of a lesson, and then also talk you through the remaining work for week 2 here. So we're going to talk eventually about all of the steps of reading comprehension support. So we will be talking about before reading this week, and soon during reading, and then after reading. So in a reading lesson plan that really supports students' comprehension, the teacher is very aware of how they are going to use before reading strategies to set the students up to read the text successfully, during reading strategies to make sure that the students are reading actively and finding what they need to find from the reading, getting what they need to get from the reading, monitoring their own comprehension, etc., as well as after reading. So connecting back to those key ideas they found, making their own connections to the text, reflecting on the text, and all of these things set students up for successful reading. If you think about it, when you have an assignment, you're opening up Act 2 of Romeo and Juliet to read for Dr. Serrallo. Before you read, you might remind yourself of what's already happened. You might sort of glance through the text. Are there any pictures? Probably not in this, but potentially, right? That can help you preview what's about to happen. You might make predictions. You probably do. Ooh, this is what I think's going to happen based on what I remember from the previous ones. Dr. Serrallo might go over some important vocabulary for you. Oh, like here's a phrase that you're going to see, and here's what it means. While you read, you're hopefully annotating, right? But students don't always do that naturally. You might be jotting down some notes. You might be making inferences as you read. And then after you read, you might write a brief summary, or you might reflect back on that. You might make a personal connection as you read. Ooh, that reminds me of this. So good readers do these things naturally, but students need to be taught how to do them. All students can benefit from sort of making these strategies explicit and building them into our coursework. So anytime you assign a text, if it's homework or if it's in-class reading, anytime you ask students to read something, you need to think about before, during, and after reading. What are you going to do to set them up for success as a class activity? What will you ask them to do while they read? And then how will you help them digest? And after reading doesn't have to be a large assignment. It can be, sort of a brief discussion. It can be a little activity. They can add to what they annotated. So here are some, just visuals of the before, during, and after reading process. Now, why this is important for you to think about, big picture for our class is right now we're working on before reading strategies for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. But one of your large assignments coming up is the reading lesson plan, okay? And that reading lesson plan is going to include a before reading strategy, a during reading strategy, and an after reading strategy. So as we work through these and we're gathering different strategies, we're considering strategies, we're talking about strategies, you will then use these or incorporate some of these into your lesson plan. And when you're student teaching, definitely if you have me for a supervisor, if you assign a text, if you ask students to read a chapter, if you ask them to read an essay, I'm going to be looking for what are you doing before, what are you doing during, what are you doing after, okay? So before reading strategies activate students' prior knowledge, increase their motivation to read, help students set a purpose for reading. And this can be vocab study. This can be thematic study. So this is probably pretty familiar to you. You might be reading Romeo and Juliet, and maybe you want to ask students, think about a time when you felt really intensely passionate about something and it almost made you a little bit impulsive, something like that, right? So increases their prior knowledge, increases their motivation or their buy-in to find out more, helps you set a purpose for reading because students are going to be thinking, oh, what are some impulsive moments I'm noticing here in Act 2, okay? So all of that work comes before you even crack open Act 2. During reading strategies, then, you're going to help students read actively. Maybe you're asking them to annotate for any moments you see characters acting impulsively, right? So it should sort of all be connected, ideally. And then after, you're going to discuss the impulsive moments they notice and talk about whether they thought those were reasonable or not. So after strategies always provide students the opportunity to summarize, question, reflect, discuss, respond, connect, etc. We like this phrase, good readers do this. So good readers make predictions. Good readers monitor their own comprehension. Good readers summarize when they finish a chunk of a text or a chapter of a text, right? So these are all strategies that we want students to carry with them, even outside of our classroom. They're not discipline specific. They're not just within the classroom things. They're just things that are important to good lifelong literacy. So focusing on before reading, a couple key benefits of before reading strategies or key purposes for using them. They can activate students' prior knowledge. Now, have you heard the phrase activate schema? This is an education phrase. So within our brain, we have all these connections and pathways, right? And there's so many pieces of information in our brain. A new piece of information cannot stick in our brains unless it can attach to something we already have. This is how learning occurs, okay? So those are schema, the things we already have within our brain. So activating schema before a student reads gives the new information somewhere to attach to. So you could say, what do you already know about bats before we read this article about bats? Even if they know very little, even if they have wrong information, literally their brain lights up in the areas they have information about bats, okay? If you were to do an MRI, you would see it, like lighting up. I don't know if MRI is the right, I'm not a doctor, okay, but still. And then when they learn more things about bats, it connects and comprehension is better. It's going to be better if the schema is activated. So this can be thematic as well. What do you already know about love? Or tell me about a time you and a friend went and had an adventure, right? Anything that turns their brain on to what they're about to read about. Also, before strategies can have the purpose of increasing motivation to read. And by the way, activating schema also increases motivation. So a lot of these work together. So anything you can do to get them pumped about what they're about to read. Maybe if before you're reading Edgar Allan Poe, you're going to stand at the front of the classroom in a cape. You're going to have spooky sounds on. You're going to ask them to think about the spookiest thing they've ever experienced and what made that atmosphere so spooky, and then maybe you're going to preview a section from a paragraph where Edgar Allan Poe creates really spooky imagery, and you're going to say, okay, what are the spooky words here and how is that created? So that's going to increase that buy-in. And this is one of the hardest things for teachers, is increasing that buy-in to get students to want to read. It's so hard sometimes. So a good quality before strategy can really help us with that. And also help students set a purpose for reading. It's just science. Reading is easier. Reading comprehension is better when students know what they're looking for or why they're reading this. So as we read this, we're going to really pay attention to how Edgar Allan Poe uses words to increase his craft. And then we're going to use some of that when we write our own short stories. We're going to look for how he does it. We're going to copy that as we begin to find our own writing style. So as you read, we're going to be looking for those moments where he creates that really powerful atmosphere. Right? So tell them what they're going to be looking for using the before reading to sort of anticipate that. So I want you to keep in mind these three main benefits because you're going to be referring to some of these benefits as you choose your own strategies. So when you choose a strategy, you might say, I chose this because I think it really helps set a purpose for reading. Or I chose this strategy because I really think it'll be good at activating students' prior knowledge. So we're going to use these phrases in this week's and next week's assignments. Here's an example. The activity that I gave you in the first video, I think, or maybe the second one of the semester, asks you on the inside circle, what do you already know about literacy? What's your definition of what it means to be literate? And I asked you to sort of sketch this out. Now, this activity usually includes a middle circle, but there wasn't really a good way to facilitate that. But in the middle circle, it can be a think, pair, share. You turn to a partner, you talk to a small group. Well, what do you guys think? And then jotting down in the inside circle. And then the middle circle, excuse me. And then on the outside circle, well, what did you learn from the text? So that would actually be the during reading. During reading is actually sort of built into this. But the first two circles, and then class discussion about what do you already know, that's going to be pre-reading. And if I were using this strategy as my example in class, I would say, this strategy is really good at activating students' prior knowledge, activating schema. Secondarily, increasing motivation to read because they feel like, ooh, I'm going to fill in that last circle. I'm going to learn some more things and expand to my definition or expand to what I already know. As well as, right, setting a purpose for reading. I'm looking for anything I didn't already know or anything that helps me expand my knowledge. Do this about bats. What do you already know about bats? What's your partner know about bats? What did you learn about bats in the article about bats, right? Very easy. And this is a strategy because it, like the definition of a strategy, is something that you can pull out, anything. You can use it anytime and no prep, right? The students draw their own circles. So it's a really, really flexible strategy. It can be applied in any context, fiction, nonfiction, any type of thing that you're doing. So that's the type of strategy that we're looking for here. Okay, so let's go to Classroom now and take a look at what you're going to be working on for the second half of this week. Going up here to the classwork tab, blah, 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 down we go. Okay, so in week 2, these are gray because they haven't been posted yet at the time I'm filming this, but we've done the first half here. This link here includes several links to pre-reading strategy resources. So each of these includes, potentially many different resources that can be used before reading. Let's see if they work. Pre-reading, during reading, right? Make sure some of these have all of them. Make sure that you're focusing on the pre-reading strategy. So the strategies that you choose for this week need to be strategies that you do before the students even open up the book or before they read the book. So some of them will be like, look at the pictures and what do you see, right? So before the students actually read the text. So you want to choose some of these. I love anticipation guides, but don't just find the first one you find and settle on that one. I want you to look around. I want you to open multiple links. Open some from the bottom. Some of the ones on the bottom are my favorites. So look around. Now notice too, this is just a list of strategies. Make sure it's a before reading strategy that you choose here for the first activities that we do. Okay, so take a look around those first. And then what you're going to do for the toolbox is choose 2 different pre-reading strategies. Please read these instructions here. Sorry about my kid. And then read these instructions here. And then you're going to choose 2 strategies, and you notice there's 2 4-square boxes. So in the first box, you're going to put the link, and then you're going to summarize the strategy in your own words. What's it called, and how does it work, right? So what does the teacher do? What does the student do? In this box, what's the purpose and value of this strategy? So you're going to refer to, from the lesson we just went over, those bullet points. Does it help set a purpose for reading? Does it do this? Does it do that? Right? From those 3 things. Which one is the focus, is the key benefit, and then maybe there's some secondary benefits too. So say what they are and give a little explanation. In this one, I just want you to think about potential pitfalls. This is just a good teaching practice. If I try this thing, what are the ways it will probably go wrong if it does? And then how can I prevent that or respond to that? So for example, with my inside out thingy, what if a student says, I know nothing about bats? And then they just got nothing, right? So they might do that just because they don't feel like doing it. Or maybe I pick something culturally that maybe somebody from somewhere, they've never heard of a bat, they don't know what a bat is, right? So how would I prevent that, or how would I have something built in to respond to that? Maybe for students who are ELL or are from cultures that don't have bats, I don't know. I've got a picture of a bat ready for that student. I say, here's a picture. What do you assume about bats based on this picture, right? So that everybody can participate. And then in this one, please evaluate the strategy according to the literacy lesson evaluation rubric. Okay, so here, I'm going to be using this to evaluate your lesson in part. This is one way I'll evaluate your lesson, but I want you to think too, what are the strengths of this lesson according to what we know about good literacy lessons, okay? So we like them to be authentic, real world stuff, okay? So does Inside Out have a real world authentic connection? In the real world, would a student think what they already know, ask someone else what they know about it, and then read the text to find out more? Higher order thinking. So does this activity encourage deep, complex understanding of important issues and ideas? My inside out, potentially. But keep in mind, not every activity has to be strong in all of these things. So maybe pick a few that you think it's really good at, and then one that it's not so good at, that maybe you would want to build other ways of higher order thinking into the lesson. I think it's high on engagement because it's got active learning, social learning, multiple intelligence. I think students would be pretty engaged with this in a real classroom. Does it have choice and voice? Do students have control over aspects of the learning here? Do teachers and students share? Does it engage students' prior knowledge? Does it allow personal connections to the topic? So again, it doesn't have to hit all of these, but talk about the one or two that you think it's strongest in, and maybe one or two that you think it's not. Or just overall, do you think it hits enough of these for it to be a really good strategy as far as a literacy lesson is concerned? Okay? In what ways would this one contribute to hitting those four? So that's how we do this, right? And you're going to do it for 2 different strategies. Please choose strategies that you don't already know about. So for example, if you already know about anticipation guides, you've done them all the time, you already have that in your toolbox, don't choose that one. Pick something else so that you're adding to what you already have. And that literacy strategy toolbox is the assignment for the second half of the week that's due on Friday, okay? Looking forward to week 3, you're going to be working with one of the strategies that you chose to share it with the class using a Flipgrid, and then you're going to do a little bit of a mini lesson plan too with pre-reading stuff. So make sure you choose strategies that you're really interested in and are really excited about, and that you understand, you know what they mean. All right, so that's the second half, and let me know if you have any questions. Bye.